Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. Today I want to start a series where I talk about tension and release. This is a very important topic in Psytrance. It's talking about the energy flow of your track and how do you transition from one energy level to the other. Today we're just going to have a look at the basics of what is an energy level and what is a transition. And then in the next few videos we're going to dive more into details about individual elements and individual things that you have to do for your transitions to make sense. So let's get started right here with this project. And as you can see, I've just laid out a kick and a bass and some other drums here and here, and this literally is the whole project. As you can see, it's just 3 parts of a kick and bass that I imported from a different project. And the reason why this is interesting is because this really gives us the 3 initial energy levels that you would have within your Psytrance track. Usually at the start of the drop, what you'll find is that you'll just have the kick and bass like this. Then after 1 or 2 segments, what you'll find is that you'll get a little bit more intense with the leads and all of the sequences and all of the effects that are in the track. And that is also followed by the drums by adding a few of the drums in there already. Finally, when you get to the very highest energy level, you will find that there's all of the drums there. So there's going to be 16-note hi-hats there. There's going to be a lot more hi-hats there. There's going to be extra layers. There's going to be extra percussions and all of that stuff. And you'll get something like this. Now, before we get into this deeper, I just want to say that if you're new here and you haven't subscribed already, make sure that you do so. That really helps the channel out. Also, if you find this video enjoyable, make sure that you leave a like. Another way to support the channel is by going to my Gumroad. There's a bunch of different projects there, including a masterclass which has 24 hours of video footage of me making a full Psytrance track from very beginning to all the way to mastering. So if you're interested in that, make sure to check out the link in the description. So these 3 energy levels kind of determine the intensity of that part of the track. Later we'll look into specific examples from production projects so you can see how that works. For now, I just want to go through how there's a connection between the amount of drums that you have and the amount of other elements that sit in a specific part of the track. So we could just draw that out with a utility. If I just throw a utility on this group here, and we start automating the game, we can say that this first part is very, very low in terms of energy. Then we go up a little bit, and then we go up a little bit more. And we can see that this transition point happens right at the start of each drop segment here. So this is kind of the point where we realize, oh, like new drums have been added and new material is there. So it's going to be a higher energy section of the track. So these are our actual energy levels right now. We can put this on the side here and I can add another utility. And this is also going to be turned off, but this we're again going to use to draw in some automation. Imagine with the intro, the start of the track is completely low energy level. The intro is going to start, there's going to be some pads and slowly it's going to build up and build up. What's going to happen is that there's going to be some kind of transition here that gets us to the energy level of the drop here. Now the exact levels that I'm setting here, this is minus 14 dB, this is minus 20 dB. They're not a reflection of the actual energy amount within the track. They're just an indication of what the energy flow is doing. Is it going up? Is it going down? Is it staying the same? Whatever. But in the grand scheme of things, when we look at the drop and we say that the drop is like this long here, so that would be a 16 bar segment drop, right? From here to here. What we probably want is we probably want the energy level increasing all the way up until like this point here, and then we can do it again. So what that means is that for our energy level here, we would duplicate this over, and then seeing as right here we snap down to very low energy again, we just take one with very low energy, and then we can take one with middle energy, and we can take one with high energy here, again to follow whatever curve that we've defined here. Now this is a pretty standard structure for Psytrance. For the first 4 segments, we're just opening up the energy level and adding extra energy, and we're getting to a high point right here. You can think of it as this being the climax of the drop, as right after that we're going to go into a very low energy part, and you'll hear a lot of the elements kind of breaking down. Usually this is a space where the vocals can come in, or you can get a little bit more crazy with the sound design and maybe just take one sequence, make it really complex and put it very far up front in the mix. That way you just have one element there with the kick and the bass, and obviously that one element is going to be very complex and maybe fairly energetic, but it's just going to be one element So overall, it's going to sound very simplistic and very relaxed part of the track. Now, obviously, these curves look nothing alike here. You can see we have this kind of sample and hold version of the energy level, where it's just going to go, okay, this is going to be very low energy, and then we're going to go zoop up, and then we're going to go zoop up here, and then we're just going to stay the same all the time. Obviously, if we wanted to complete this, we would have this, and then this here. But in real life, when we're listening to music, there isn't really something like a step like this. It's usually more of like a flow. So what we would probably want is towards the end of this part here, we want to start preparing the listener for the higher energy part of this track that is coming. So we're just going to raise the energy level over this part here. The same is going to be true if we want to have this intro stuff happening. We want a little bit of higher energy at the part where the drop is, then it just goes down, and then it goes back up again, preparing for the next segment here. That means that for our intro, we probably have our intro rising up in energy level. Now, when it comes to energy level, I cannot give you a strict definition. It's going to depend on all of the elements that sit in the track, but there's a lot of factors that go into the energy level. Overall, the speed of all of the elements. Are you playing 8 notes? Are you playing quarter notes? Are you playing 16 notes? Are you playing 32 notes? That together with the overall rhythm of those notes are going to determine kind of the speed of the sequence that you're playing. Then you have other things that are involved as well. The amount of stereo width, for example. You have the different frequencies that are used, the overall loudness of a track that is used. The types of elements that are used. Obviously, if you have more drum elements, as we said before, there is a likely chance that there is higher energy. In general, if you have more elements, we would say that you have more energy overall, because obviously with more elements, there's more things going on and there's more things to concentrate to. But it's really hard to just define a formula that says, okay, this amount of high frequencies, that is this amount of high energy. And that's obviously true for all of the different factors. So for this first drop, we've established the energy level. You can imagine that for the second drop, we would basically want to do the same thing. We can make it more interesting though. What we can do is we can say, well, I really like this point here in the middle, and I would like to have a little bit of extra energy there as well. So we're just going to go down here, and maybe this will be also curved or something like this, so that we have maybe like a sweep up or some kind of one-shot effect here, a little bit of a strong impact sound here, and that's just going to go down again into a lower energy level at this point. And the reason why I've chosen the middle point has to do with the division rule, which I talked about before in my video on arrangement. But for a quick recap, what we can do is we can look at the section length. So this would be 16 bars here. And we can just take that and divide it in half. And that will be our first division point or our first point of interest, which is usually an interesting point within the segment. And in this case, the way that we're counting is we're counting from the start of one drop to the start of the next drop. And obviously fills are included within that count. So this is 14 bars of drop, and then we have 2 bars of fill. Now what we would probably want to do is, seeing as we're going to go into a very high energy level part here, we would probably want this to rise up to that level already. And you can already see from the curve that in terms of elements, there's going to be slightly more stuff happening here than there is happening here. Because in this part, we're preparing the listener for the more energetic part that is happening later. And then obviously here again, what you would probably do is you would probably say, okay, maybe here we'll have a low point and then we'll rise up again here. And maybe in this point, we want to have one more interesting point in the middle. So we're just going to go down here and here. Maybe this point isn't that high. And this point is a lot higher because we really want to just up the energy level here going into this lower part here so that we get a very strong transition here. But it is a transition nonetheless, so we'll probably do something like this. You can imagine there being a lot of delay tails and reverb tails that come from all of the elements that are playing in here, that are rising up right up until this point, right up until where we have this click, and then just go down all together, and all of the reverb and delay tails are just still fading out here, but the rest is all stopped playing. So that is the way that you read this graph. Obviously, I've been doing this a little bit arbitrarily in that I've just been setting the points here. I haven't actually been producing anything of the track. Normally, the discussion that you see within here of what the energy level should do isn't really reflected into an automation like this. There's not a lot of people that just have one of these automations. Even I recommended it to many people, but I never do it myself. This idea of having an automation line which directly shows you the energy level. The way that we tend to do it is we just look at all of the different elements within the production and we can just instantly hear the energy level. But it can be something that can be really hard to overlook, the way that elements are flowing through the track and together interact into providing this overall energy level of the track. Because again, this isn't tied to any single element. This is tied to all of the elements together. It's going to be the fact that the kick and bass is playing. It's going to be the fact that more drums are playing here and here. It's going to be determined by the amount of leads that are playing, the amount of effects that you have, where the vocals sit, where all of the crashers, downlifters, risers, impacts, all of those things set. They obviously have a massive impact on the energy level because they're used into the transitions. So risers and downlifters and impacts and stuff like that, they kind of help you slope this slope here and this slope here, going into and out of the points of transition between the different sections, here and here and here. So now let's have a look at an actual project. So here we are within a project of mine. You can see this is quite a big project, but we just have to look at the drums and specifically this group to check out the energy levels. If we zoom in a little bit, we can see that this is going to be low energy. This is going to be medium energy. Here we have high energy, low energy, medium, high, another medium, and then another low for the outro. So it's just directly proportional to the amount of drums that you have. But there's an interesting thing here in that you can see that for the mediums, I would say that there's like a few sub-levels. In this case, we have just the open hat here. And then obviously later we go to the part where we have the offbeat hat and the snare. And you can hear that there's more stuff going on, more different sounds, more unique sounds. And then finally we go to the higher energy parts. And this is where you can hear one of the interesting things in that there's this big sequence here playing. So even though it might seem like there are fewer elements, specifically when looking at the one-shots group here, you can just see that there's much less stuff happening here as in the space after it or even before it in the lower energy part. Because we have this big sequence overtaking everything together with one of the atmospheres in here, you actually get a very high energy sense of the track. So one of the things that I would want to point out at this point is that there's no one-to-one like relationship between the amount of elements and just the energy level. It's not like, okay, I'm going to put more elements in there and therefore it's going to be higher energy. It is not determined by the quantity of elements, but by the quality of the elements and the transitions that you have on them, the modulations that you have on them, the automations that you have on them, all of that stuff. But that's going to be something that we'll look into a next video in this series. So you can hear very long sequence, very much rising and increasing the energy level over time, together with the atmosphere becoming louder, the one-shots becoming less filtered, and just overall the transition from the lower frequencies that are being accentuated here to the higher frequencies that are accentuated later within the synth. You can just hear that this last part is a lot higher energy, but overall the energy level stays pretty much the same because there's not a lot of extra stuff that is being added or that is being changed a lot, right? Even though the energy level is perceived higher here than here, that mainly has to do with the fact that there's just this slow kind of morph between this lower energy level and higher energy level here. And when I say lower energy level, I don't mean lower as in low like this energy level here, which is clearly a lot lower, but just a slightly lower energy level of still the highest energy level possible within a Psytrance track. So again, if we just want to draw that out we can use a utility. Let's disable it so the gain doesn't actually affect anything. And we just draw out the energy level, maybe starting here. This is quite a medium one, I would say. We go up here to a little bit of a higher one because this is where the snare is added. And there's a little bit of a rising part here as well. So after listening through this part of the project, I think that this is a very good description of the energy level that we have here. We start off with our two medium sections here that then just go into the higher energy level section here. This is the one with the long sequence. In order to do that, there's a little bit of a rising effect in here, in that it's rising into the sequence and rising into this point. And you see that later as well in this part here as well, before we go into the really aggressive stuff. Because we're going up here in energy level, we want to prepare the listener for the next energy level that is about to come. So we rise into it. And I'm sure that at some point, at the point where we go lower, we would also say the same thing, in that here our energy level is going to be significantly lower. So we want to prepare our listener within the fill or within the last part of our drop segment for the next energy level that is about to come. And the same might be true here as well, where we go even lower still. So that's the energy level of a track. I am going to split this up in a few episodes, and for each of them I'm going to be talking about a specific part of making transitions and tension and release and all of that stuff within your track. The point of today's video will just be to talk about energy levels as a whole and what they are, what they represent. Now they're really hard to explain, so hopefully within this video I was able to explain them to the best of my abilities by showing also project examples and stuff like that. In the next video we're going to look into risers and downlifters and how they play a role within the energy level system that we have here. I assume that you can kind of understand how they would be playing a role in here, in that a riser would be bringing up the energy level and a downlifter is downlifting from a high point of energy. But we will still look into much more detail in a later video. So if you're interested in seeing more of this series and you're new here, make sure that you're subscribed. Also leave a like for the video if you want to see more of this and you want to show me that this is an interesting video. Another good way to support me is to watch some more of my content, so I'll leave a few of my videos in the end cards. But that's going to be it for today. I hope you enjoyed and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye bye.